On the morning of October 29th, 1990, a man was digging through a dumpster in an alley just off of Santa Monica Boulevard in West Hollywood when he saw something very strange. It was a large bundle wrapped tightly in black plastic. At first glance, it really could have been anything. Trash, maybe some old clothes, maybe carpeting that someone tossed out during a remodel. But the shape was off, and when he tried to pull it towards him, he realized it was much too heavy to be any of those things. So he tore the plastic open. Inside were human remains. And not a whole body, just the head and feet of a young man. LAP detectives arrived to a scene that was so brutal and graphic that many of them still remember the details more than 30 years later. The alley was immediately sealed off with crime scene tape, and inside that dumpster was the face of 25-year-old William Arnold Newton. But in the gay adult film world, he was known as Billy London. Most of his body was missing. There was really no way to tell where the killing had taken place, who had done it, or why his remains were left like this. In West Hollywood, news of the murder spread very, very quickly. Even in a community already reeling from the AIDS crisis, losing dozens of young men each month, this killing stood out because it wasn't an illness or an accident. It was a deliberate act of violence. Detectives worked really hard in the case during the early days, but continued to run headfirst into a wall of silence. I mean, let's be honest, the gay community did have good reason to distrust the police during the early 1990s. And without witnesses willing to come forward, the case went cold. For the next 30 years, Billy London's murder became one of LA's many unsolved crimes. And it was kept alive mostly by people who knew him and by the lingering, disturbing image of how he died. And then in a twist that didn't come from police labs or a new piece of forensic technology, the break in the case came from someone else entirely. From someone far outside of law enforcement. Someone who wasn't even in Los Angeles at the time. An internet sleuth who stumbled upon Billy's story and just couldn't let it go out of his head. A civilian who, according to the lead detective, made connections that seasoned homicide investigators admitted they would, quote, never would have come up with in a million years. This is Case Files with Matt Cullen, and today we are diving into the case of Billy London. William Arnold Newton was born in the summer of 1965 in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. Growing up, his life was always on the move. Eau Claire to Ladysmith, then down to Oklahoma City after his first year of high school. His mother was often on the move, and so, of course, Billy just went with her. At 16, he decided to try living with his father instead. But the welcome wasn't what he had hoped for. When Billy showed up at his dad's door, he says his father looked at him and said, quote, "You're no F-word son of mine," before slamming the door shut. From that moment, Billy knew one thing and one thing only. He was on his own. He drifted around, sometimes staying with friends, sometimes just getting by however he could. Eventually, he made his way to Los Angeles in the mid-1980s. One of thousands of young gay men who saw West Hollywood as a place where they could be fully themselves for once. One of his first steady jobs was at the Hollywood Spa, a well-known gay bathhouse on Santa Monica Boulevard. He worked the front desk, handed out towels. He really kept the place running. That's where he met Mark Robbins, who was there one night judging a beauty contest for Data Boy, which was a local gay magazine at the time. The two seemed to hit it off immediately, starting a relationship that would be on and off for the next few years. Mark was a producer in the gay adult film industry, and soon Billy, now using the stage name Billy London, was an actor in a lot of his films. But Billy wasn't just in front of the camera. He did the makeup, set design, and production work. But like a lot of people in the scene, Billy also partied very hard. Mark says they used to do a lot of meth on the weekends, and sometimes he worried they were doing too much. By October of 1990, the two were living apart again. Billy was planning to take a break from LA. He thought maybe he'd move to Las Vegas for a little while and stay with his sister while he helped his mom settle into a new place there. But that break would never come. On the night of October 28, 1990, Billy went out. It was Sunday, but in West Hollywood, especially right after Halloween weekend, the bars along Santa Monica Boulevard were still buzzing. Witnesses later placed him at Rage nightclub, which is no longer a nightclub here in West Hollywood. Anyways, at Rage nightclub, he was talking to friends, dancing, and at one point, chatting to a man that nobody else seemed to recognize. One witness, decades later, would describe the man as looking eerily similar to Jeffrey Dahmer, though Dahmer himself was never linked to Los Angeles and denied involvement before his death in prison in 1994. By the end of the night, Billy was seen leaving Rage, but where he went next and with whom is not clear. The next morning, on October 29th, a man digging through a dumpster in an alley right off of Santa Monica Boulevard near La Brea made the gruesome discovery. Inside a large black plastic bag was a human head and feet. The rest of the body was missing. Retired LAP detective Wendy Burnt, who was assigned this case, still remembers the scene vividly. The bright sun, the heat, the smell of the alley, and the young face staring back at her in the dumpster. Billy Newton, 25 years old. It was really the kind of murder that gets under your skin. Wendy didn't care that he was gay or that he worked in adult film. She really saw a victim whose case needed to be solved. And Wendy poured everything into it. But in 1990, solving a case like this wasn't easy. The physical evidence was very limited, and most people who might have known something didn't trust the police enough to come forward. And whatever had happened to the rest of Billy's body was a mystery that nobody could solve. And unfortunately, despite Wendy's relentless work, the trail just went cold. For the next 3 decades, Billy's case sat in the LAPD cold case files. Detective Wendy had filled 6 thick binders with notes, interviews, photographs, and theories, which is far more than most cases even get. But without witnesses willing to testify, and with almost no physical evidence beyond what was found in that dumpster, there was really nowhere for the investigation to go. This kind of reminds me of a case I've already done before on Case Files, which I will link below if you have not checked that out, but it involves a series of murders that were taking place in San Francisco, and they could not find who was doing it because nobody was willing to testify. It was during the same time, and I think people were scared and distrustful of police, and so they didn't come forward. It's a really fascinating case. I'll link it below if you're interested in watching that as well. Anyways, in 2017 or 2018, filmmaker Rachel Mason stumbled on Billy's case by accident. She was working on a documentary for Circus of Books when she met local writer and activist Mike Szymanski. As they sorted through his old photos of West Hollywood, a newspaper clipping fell out of the notebook. The headline read, quote, "Cops have no clues in grisly killing of LA porn actor." She tucked the story away in her mind, and when she wrapped Circus of Books, she began quietly digging into the murder. And around the same time, authors Christopher Rice and Eric Shaw Quinn, hosts of the Dinner Party show, learned about the case and decided to feature it on their podcast. In October 2020, just before the 30th anniversary of the murder, they aired that episode that was about Billy. Detective John Lamberti, who had recently picked up the cold case, didn't know about the podcast when it aired, and so he listened. The details really caught his attention. John reached out to Rachel, Christopher, and Eric, and soon they were sharing information, and that is when the case started to turn. Caught the eyes of someone that was far from Los Angeles, a person with no badge, no formal training in homicide investigations, and really nothing to gain. The person behind the online sleuthing was Clark Williams, a stay-at-home dad from Eau Claire, Wisconsin.
I was an empty nester. My daughter had gone off to college. I was feeling a bit bereft. You know what happens to gay men, as you know, when we get older, we get put out to pasture. Our contributions are not exactly welcomed anymore. And I thought, frankly, that's what was happening with me.
Clark hadn't known Billy personally, but he couldn't ignore how much of their lives seemed to parallel each other.
I grew up on a farm in northern Wisconsin, and I was looking for people that were part of my coming of age. I don't need to tell you that most of them are dead, unfortunately, from HIV and AIDS, but I thought maybe there were a few survivors. Like, sometimes I feel like a lone survivor in many ways of my group of friends. What I found was this posting by Rachel Mason about this unsolved murder and Jeffrey Dahmer possibly being involved. I'm quite familiar with Jeffrey Dahmer because I was living in Milwaukee during the years that Jeffrey Dahmer was there and went to the same bars and nightclubs he did. Also, I was in Milwaukee during the years after Dahmer, and which was really a dangerous time for gay men because all of that attention that came to our safe spaces that were revealed in the Dahmer investigation. Suddenly, all the people who hate gay people knew where to find us, right? So I learned about this case, and as I was reading the article, I realized that the victim, Billy Newton, was from the same small town that I grew up in. And we were the same exact age. In fact, we were born 1 week apart. And I couldn't understand it. I'm like, how did I not know this kid? as I started to be interviewed by Rachel about Billy, I thought, let me see if I can do some of my own digging.
Clark started small, scrolling through online archives, looking for any mention of Billy in old newspapers or magazines.
I just began using all my experience as a clinical social worker, building a biopsychosocial assessment of Billy, understanding his whole family history, his work history, his school history. I went back to Wisconsin and walked the streets that he walked.
Then he decided to focus on the local gay porn scene in West Hollywood in the late 1980s and 90s.
I basically watched a lot of porn.
Fun.
Listen, I watch porn usually for 15 or 20 minutes. That's how long it takes me. And then I close my computer and I'm done.
Same.
In this case, right, I watched a lot of porn movies. And I know you'll laugh, but I literally watched them for the credits. I was trying to connect people who worked for how people advanced in their porn careers. And many of the porn models worked maybe 2 or 3 films. Most of them used different aliases, so that was a challenge. I had to find the real person. And so when I would find a gay porn model who had either worked with Billy or been on the cast or crew, I would research them and find out everything about them and what happened to them. And most of them were dead. It was very depressing and frustrating because in fact I was reliving my whole life experience of coming of age in the 1980s. So many of the people that were part of the fabric of my life are dead. And here I am, still alive, trying to tell their stories.
He went through the credits of films during that period, searching for anyone who might have worked with Billy. That's when he saw a name in the credits of a movie that was filmed right around the time of Billy's murder. Billy Houston. On its own, it wasn't remarkable, but Clark kept digging. He spent hours in online databases, old news stories, and court records. Eventually, he stumbled on a 2007 article out of Oklahoma. It was about a man named Daryl Lynn Madden, a self-described white supremacist and skinhead, convicted of killing a gay man named Stephen Domer. Buried in the article was one small but explosive detail. Madden had once acted in gay porn under the name Billy Houston. From there, the pieces just started falling into place. Madden's criminal records show that he was in Los Angeles around the time of Billy's murder. And at that point in history, skinhead gangs were very active in West Hollywood, and some even targeted gay men.
And not just in Hollywood, by the way, but in most cities across the country, New York and DC and San Francisco. These skinheads, white supremacists, were attacking gay people, people of color, Jewish people, the unhoused. Unfortunately, the police at the time were not really investigating them as hate crimes. In fact, the term hate crime didn't even exist in 1990.
It was a lead that no one in law enforcement had ever connected before. And when Clark found a passage in a true crime book in which Madden allegedly confessed to killing someone in Los Angeles, he knew that he had something that he just could not ignore. Everything. Film credits, criminal records, news articles, and book excerpts, and sent it straight to John at LAPD. By the time John and his partner looked into Clark's research, they realized that the connection wasn't just interesting, it was truly explosive. Daryl, crazily enough, had worked for a gay porn company in a building that was on Santa Monica Boulevard that backed directly onto the alley where Billy's remains were found. And then there was a statement that Clark had found in the book American Honor Killings. Daryl allegedly confessing to killing someone in Los Angeles. Combined with the criminal records and the location link of him working in the building that backed right onto the alley, it was enough for John and Tamara to take the next step. On January 4th, they traveled to an Oklahoma prison to speak to Daryl. Today, Daryl identifies as a transgender woman named Dara Lynn. When the detectives met her, the contrast was jarring. Dara Lynn described herself as having once lived a triple life, acting in porn as Billy, working as a sex worker named Lynn, and running around with violent white supremacists as Richie Rich. As the conversation went on, John eased into questions about Billy's murder. Slowly, Dara Lynn admitted that she and her skinhead friends had seen Billy walking along Santa Monica Boulevard that night. They had decided to target him for a robbery. She said that she had put her arm around him, told him they were going to rob him, and quote, probably beat the crap out of him, and that he was going to come with them without making any sort of scene. Dara Lynn claimed that she couldn't remember where they took him, but she admitted to strangling him, a detail that matched the coroner's findings. She also said that Billy was high on meth at that time. which was consistent with the toxology report. When she was asked about the mutilation, she denied having any part in the dismembering of the body. She said she left Billy's body with 2 other people, refusing to name them, and it was enough for John and Tamara to close the case in their files. But it wouldn't be enough for prosecutors. In California, the district attorney's office reviewed the case and decided not to file charges. Their reasoning was simple, but also very unsatisfying. Darrell Lynn was already serving a life sentence for another murder in Oklahoma, and the likelihood of securing a conviction of a 30-year-old case with limited physical evidence was slim. To them, it just wasn't worth the resources. For many in West Hollywood's older gay community, that answer just felt hollow. I mean, they finally had a name, a confession, and a clear picture of what had happened. I guess it was some sort of justice, but in the smallest, quietest way. Some still wonder whether Darrell Lynn told the full truth. If others were involved that night, they've never been named. And the motive, a random robbery according to her, has never sat right with anybody. Billy had been bound, strangled, stabbed, dismembered. To some, that violence felt very personal. Billy's life was so much more than the way that it ended. Friends remember him as creative and funny. He was someone who really brought the best out of people on and off camera. Losing him the way that the community did was truly devastating.
You know, I started this search looking for old friends, and I actually found one in Billy Newton.
May you rest in peace, Billy. Thank you so much for watching another episode of Case Files. If there is a case you'd like to see me dive into next, make sure to email me at matthewalcullen@gmail.com. I read all the emails you send me, and a lot of the cases I've dived into on this channel are from your emails, so I really appreciate you reaching out and letting me know what you would like to see me do next. Thank you again so much for watching, and I will see you soon with another video. Okay, bye-bye.